Welcome to the Kingdom Alliance podcast, where we share stories that matter. At Kingdom Alliance, we are on a mission to ignite a movement of impact and freedom through mentorship and the development of leaders across the globe. You're invited to listen in as we share stories from men and women around the world who are having a massive impact on the kingdom. Here at Kingdom Alliance, we believe that when you change yourself, you change the world.
Welcome back to the Kingdom Alliance podcast. I'm your host, Molly Trotter Gomez. You guys are in for a real treat with Karrie Garcia here today. I mean, there are so many directions that we can go with this woman, and I am very excited to dive into all the things. So we're just even playing like, are we going to have to play roulette here, Karrie, on which topic we're going to go down? Because there's so many good ones. But we are going to be talking about how to live free and fully alive. And so she is just an absolute expert on this topic. And before we really dive into the meat of this, because I'm sure everybody's leaning in being like, that sounds good. How do I do that?
Right.
Karrie, I would love for you to introduce yourself so the people at home can get to know you.
Hi, guys. It is awesome to be on here. I'm excited for all of you that are gathering to listen today, because I think we all come here knowing there's more for us. We want to do more. And there's been some things that have tripped us up and going, what is keeping me back from stepping into this fully alive life? And for me, my story is very much operating from a place of knowing that I was free in Jesus. Like I accepted him on my parents' bed, 4 years old, I'm saved, here we go. But operating for so many years through this place of demand, and I've got to do all the things to be able to fit in or to keep in belonging or even to have Jesus proud of me. And that ended up playing into my life in a ton of destructive ways, and really moved me away from God and really away from myself through drug addiction and engaging the suicide of my mother, and this whole idea around this world of religion. And really understanding where I fit in God's story and in God's plan, and how does my story fit in that. And so the jumbled up way I'm trying to offer to all of you guys is I am this woman who really stopped and took a look and said, if this is all there is, then I want nothing to do with God or Christianity. But if there is more, if there is something more where I cannot just operate out of, demand, but really sit and understand that God has this abundance for me, I want to know what that is. And the journey of that has taken over the past 30 years of my life, where now I run an organization called Freedom Movement, and we certify coaches on how to be more trauma-informed, biblically sound, and spirit-filled, and help people gain the knowledge through their own healing so that they can ultimately go out and heal those they love.
I love that. I mean, there's no more living secondhand faith, right?
Right.
No more. There's no more of that.
We're done.
I used to be that person, be like, yeah, that sounds good. Or even secondhand in politics, not everything, but a lot of things. Because I didn't want, or I was scared, or I was like, how am I going to figure out my own assessment of whatever it is I'm looking for? But I literally recently, I did a live talking about that. There was a piece of it of when I was in my 20s and I was going through a season, I was like, all right, I grew up in the church, all that, but I was just like, is that it? Like this?
Right.
No, thank you. But I was like, okay, Lord, it's you and me. Like, I know you're real. You've made yourself known to me, but I want to dig in deeper. There has to be more to this. There has to be. So I love that you touched on that, because we get to dive into that relationship no matter where it goes. And I think sometimes people think it's really scary. And I don't know if you've ever had that experience of I'm kind of terrified to go there. So I would love to speak to that, because a lot of people are they're nervous of what will I find when I go into the deep?
Yeah. I mean, here's the truth. People say this often, and you're absolutely right. If I open up the past, then I'm going to be drowned by the past. And here's what we know just neurologically. Let's just get really nerdy for a second. That we have these awesome things in our brain called neurons. And these neurons are shaped from the time we're born, and they're shaped through the environment in which they're raised. These neurons create what we believe about ourselves and ultimately who we become. The only way that we can change that, well, there's twofold. One of the ways that we can change that is we actually have to go back into the stories that shaped us so we can ultimately come back to the hands that formed us. So if we're formed in our mother's womb and God has a plan for our life, this world also has an agenda for your life. And you've been marked by this world. So when I have people that say, well, if I go back into those stories and I open them up and I begin to look at some of these places that shaped us, I'm just going to be drowned by it. My response to that is going, you're already being drowned by it. You're already being limited by those thoughts. You're already being, so much of your story already dictates what you believe and who you've become. So the only option is to actually go back and rediscover those stories in a safe environment where we can grieve and move forward so that we can have what psychologists would call integration in our brain and what Jesus would call shalom, peace that comes to our whole body. And this is more of the fully alive life. So yes, it's going to be hard because facing anything that has harmed us is hard. But by not looking at it, we're dictated by our pain. But by looking at it, we begin to be dictated by freedom.
That is so good. And let me remind me to make sure I have this correctly. I started to write it down. Come back to the moments that shaped us to, what was it? The hands that made us?
Yeah, the hands that formed us.
The hands
we
that
love that
formed-
scripture, don't we? I was formed in my mother's womb. And I'm like, yes, you were, but also you were shaped by a world that is not for you, that's broken and fallen, whether it's fallen, broken parents or environments. You have had harm that's come to you, and that shaped not only your spirit, but your brain. And God actually wants to renew our brain. He wants to heal our brain. He wants us to live integrated, fully alive.
Yes, we need to go back to the hands that made us. That is so good. I wrote that down. I was like, oh, that is so good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Like really digging in deep. And I love that you went there because obviously, like when it comes to neuroscience, you could nerd out here all day long. That could be a whole hour podcast in and of itself. But I mean, I love how you're integrating here's what, therapists would say, psychologists would say, here's what the word says, what Jesus says, and you're bringing them together and letting people know it will be hard, but you get to choose your heart because you're either just going to leave those things there and then they start collecting and festing and festering, I should say, and it gets gross. Or healing can happen in those areas. Yes. And I feel like, and you're probably going to, just blow the door wide open of like, in order to really live fully alive, like that is key. There's a lot of people where sometimes I just see zombies walking around, like they're walking, but nobody's home. And they're all just kind of like, let me just get through the next, or like, I can't wait to get to the next part rather than being like fully like in that freedom place and alive. So I'd love for you to speak to that.
Yeah. I mean, here's the deal. I think we think that in order to be fully alive or to live abundant or to live with purpose, that we actually have to eradicate parts of ourselves, meaning I can only focus on the good. I can only see what's positive. We take scripture out of context, like, think on these things, whatever's good, whatever's pure, whatever's right. But the problem is that's not actually integrated living. Integrated living is holding the grief and the gratitude, knowing that I can hold hard and holy. It's being able to allow all of ourselves to come online and be able to bring that and examine it, to look at it, to hold it, so that it can heal. And so a fully alive life is not a life that is absence of pain. A fully alive life is the presence of God in your pain. It's allowing there to be presence when there's hard. And I think for so many of us, we look at our life, and this is a big pain point for people, is like, I've read scriptures, I've done all the Bible studies, I go to church, I'm killing it, for the kingdom or whatever, and I'm still anxious. I still have depression. I still have limiting beliefs. And so I just need to try harder and do more. And that's where I would pause and say, can we pause? And can we understand that there are places that have shaped how you see yourself? And it's not that you're going to be able to will yourself away from those things. It's that you need to come back to those things and name them in the reality and truth that as they're affecting you and holding you and where they come from. Because if the truth sets us free, then we have to tell the truth about our experiences in our life in a place that allows our spirit and our brain to heal. And so a fully alive life is really the integration of all that we're holding, all that we've experienced, and bringing that before trusted friends and before a God who actually wants to hold what makes all of you, not just parts of you.
So good. A couple of things that came up for me while you're sharing that is the amount of times this year alone, the main phrase I've heard from the Holy Spirit, be still, be still. And I even have this like crop shirt that I wear at the gym that's like neon pink, and it's like, be still. And people are like, be still and know, it says. They're like, be still and know. Like, who wears that to the gym? I was like, this is like my anthem this year, apparently. Be still. From a doer of like, I'm going to do all the things. The Lord's like, no, be still. And that's where you're going to find peace. And I actually picked up, coloring this year. Like I have my coloring books, my markers, and just, you have to be still in order to draw out color in the lines, like just things I wouldn't normally do. But he's like, I'm going to give you this because of whatever he's working out, because being a doer, you're just like, I'm dying this slow death of quicksand. And he's like, but there's other things I want to get to. So, and I know there's so many people that can relate to that, because we just want to speed past the things that are hard, that are always going to be there. But yeah, be still is a phrase that has been like, I don't want to say haunting me, but it's like the one thing I hear with like a resounding, just like echo in my brain. And I'm like, okay, what does that look like? And for 34 years, not really realizing what that looks like, understanding the concept, but not doing that part of doing literally nothing and just being still. There's so much peace in that. And I was like, gosh, how come I haven't done this before? Like it's a wild concept, but I love that you shared that, because I know there's a lot of people in the body right now that are experiencing that, just from various conversations of like, it's not about what you can do. It's about you being still and what he's doing on your behalf. And you have to understand there's so much being done more on your behalf, but the enemy wants to try to get us to look at all this other stuff. But if you're still and know, then you don't even focus on that other stuff he's trying to blind you with.
Right. I mean, being still is really risky. That's why we don't do it. If I have to be still and be in my body, I have to feel sorrow. I have to feel the things that I don't want to feel. It's much easier to stay busy and not feel. So the commandment, 10 commandments between monotheism and don't murder, is rest. And it's not because you're not doing anything. It's that you're clearing away what is keeping you from doing actually the great calling that God uniquely has for you. But to be still is great in concept. But if we're being honest, it's very risky. There's a reason why you and so many others, why be still, you use the word haunting, because it's great in theory until you actually have to sit. And you have to sit because when you sit and are quiet, there is nowhere for the places that you have stuffed down to go except for to your heart, your mind, and for you to engage. And that can be really painful. But it's a command for a reason, and not because he just wants you to do it. It's a command because without it, you will be doing out of a place of demand and not from desire. You'll be doing it to keep your belonging and to work from worth rather than for it. And so there's, or work for worth rather than from a place of worth. And so, you say that and we wear shirts, be still, right? And yet a fully alive life means that I actually have to sit and feel the stillness. And that's very, very risky. It requires something of you that you have been avoiding for many years. And it's to look at your own face, to see God's gaze upon you and to sit in that. That is painful. That is hard. And yet that is where you will find calling, purpose, and really love.
That's beautiful. And I think when it comes to like even knowing what that looks like, most people don't have somebody that they know or can model after of like, I don't even know what that's supposed to look like. So talk about the risk factor. There's a lot of different risks, as well as like, I've never seen anybody before me or around me or near me. Like, what does this look like? What am I supposed to do? And then just being just really raw with it of like, it's okay if you don't even know what you're supposed to do. Just be and being like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but I'm going to be still and just show me, Lord, show me what that looks like. And even as you're talking, it reminds me of just the vulnerability of having, being with the Lord of like, here's where I am. Here's like, he already knows, but he wants you to come to him with it. That's taken me a number of years to do that, because I was like, oh, well, if I do that, then it doesn't seem like I'm grateful or I'm not this and that. And I'm like, God wants it, period. He wants you, period. No matter what you can do, you can't necessarily do anything for him. And so it's just that reminder of like, from somebody who grew up with works, didn't grow up Catholic, but it felt like it because it was just like works all over the place and achievements. And then it's just like, that doesn't matter at all. Like I could care less of what that looks like. If I'm in alignment and I'm being obedient to where God is calling me, whether that is a small achievement on the world scale or a massive one, it doesn't matter, because obedience is the win. It is, being able to draw closer to him. So this is so good. I hope so many people are having just like a good moment of whether it's self-reflection, not beating ourselves up, having grace, but understanding like, here's some things that we can really seep into in our quiet time next.
So good.
Yeah, I love that. Now, as we kind of like wrap this up a little bit, I mean, I would love to know, like, gosh, you've used this phrase a couple of times, demand versus desire. Now, I know we even talked about this before we hit record, but you've said it a few times, and I love that aspect to it. So this may even dovetail into a little bit of a different conversation, but it keeps just standing out to me. So I feel prompted to ask about it because that is a very, it's just a very powerful phrase. I would love for you to touch base on that a little bit more because, I'm sure there's some correlations with that. And, of course, living free and fully alive as well.
Absolutely. I mean, a fully alive life operates from either desire or delight. It offers from a place of freedom. And so demand is this sense inside us that says, if I don't do this, then I will lose belonging, that I will lose acceptance. So I operate from a place of, if I could do, I will gain what my heart desires, which is to belong, which we know that no matter what, no matter how much we do, we still are wanting more. Like it's never enough. But when we start to submit our lives and going, God, this is the honest place of my heart. This is what I'm struggling with. This is what's real. When we begin to have the ugliest parts of us met by God's love, and truly like God's love, by sitting still and letting him gaze and say, I see it all and I love it all. I love you. And there's challenge for more. We start to work from a place of delight, desire, creativity. There is not a call to not work. It is be still and know, and also go make disciples, like follow me. So this isn't like hey, don't work. It's the motivation behind why you do what you do. Are you doing this out of a place of demand that says, if I don't do it, I won't be seen as, if I don't do this, I will, if I do this, I will have belonging. It is this demand that comes on you that says, I must operate to receive love. And desire says, I actually operate from love. I actually operate from already knowing that whether I'm killing it for the kingdom and whatever that looks like, or I'm just operating and being with Jesus and loving my neighbor as myself, like the greatest commandment is to love. And I actually can't offer that unless I understand love. Demand is never from God. God does not operate from demand. That is darkness. It is evil. It is something that keeps you bound. And I see so many women and men doing this today. And we cloak it in spirituality. Like, if you're busy and whatever, like you're really killing it, then you must be blessed and anointed. When actuality, that's not true. My gifts can take me really, really far. I'm pretty gifted in a lot of things. But if I'm operating from demand, I've lost my soul. If I'm operating from a place of desire, I am working from a soul that has been loved and is whole and is fully alive. And so those are really two different things. And the question I would ask yourself is, what's my motivation? Am I operating from, if I don't do this, I will lose what? Because you've already gained, you already have. And so I operate from that place. And that's a huge transition for people. That, I believe, is when you're living. That's a fully alive marker when you're operating from desire versus demand.
That is so good. And I'm very happy right now, Karrie. We were able to combine the two. We were like, what are we going to talk about? We combined it. I was like, there's going to be a way, and I can't choose this. She said it. We're going to go there. We're going to see what happens. If not, people know me that I squirrel off, and I'm like, I squirrel because it intrigued me. So just follow wherever it goes.
Yeah, right.
But that is so good and so meaty. And there's even so many things on here where I'm going to go back and listen to really be able to take to my quiet time, because part of that being still, being able to really listen. Like I get up very early in the morning to have that time before the bustle of the day, if you will, starts really moving around. And that is important to really just be like, okay, Lord, what do you have for me before everybody else is awake? Like, where do we go? And you've given me a lot to chew on, to be like, okay, Lord, like, I'm going to lay it out. Here's what Karrie said. I love it all. Is there anything else, anything that you want to dive in today? Because I'm a blank canvas and we're ready to paint.
I love it. I love it. So good.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. This has been amazing. Where can people find you? I know we'll have notes below, but let us know where people can connect with you, because I'm sure they're going to want to.
Yeah, you can follow me at Karrie Scott Garcia on Instagram or Facebook. You can also follow my organization, Freedom_Movement. That's where all of my trainings are, our online trainings, in-person trainings. It's where our coaching certificate lives. So you can go see all of that and get trained in a lot of the work that I do. And if something's coming up for you and you're just like, man, like, I know for me, the how was just really, I just How? I know all these things. I hear all these things. Great. Demand versus desire. Awesome. Be still. Okay, great. Like free and fully alive. Great. How? And that is why I really did pour my heart and soul into a book that I just wrote called Free and Fully Alive, reclaiming the story of who you were created to be. And it's really a how-to guide. It's like a field map, if you will, for understanding your story and God's story and how that intersects together, really where the enemy goes unnamed and unchallenged, and some steps to begin to walking out a more integrated, shalom-centered life to work from desire and not from demand. So you can go pick that up anywhere books are sold, Amazon, whatever, on our website, whatever. But that would be a great first step for you as well.
Amazing. Karrie, you're incredible. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Awesome. It was so fun.